Alright, so I went to Harbor Freight and to get the tools I needed. They did not have the spring compressor, they're out of stock. So I'm not going to be able to dismantle the strut. But I was able to buy this kit to remove the drive axle nut, which is this guy. It is pinched on one side. Let me show you. So there's like a keyhole slot there, and basically it's basically pinned into that slot so that it doesn't work itself out. But it actually came out fairly easy. However, to pull that back was not easy. I think I broke 2 screwdrivers trying to do it. So I would think that they would make that part a little bit easier to mess with, but that's not the case. One other thing, when I pull this out, when I put the correct way to do this is to actually remove this from the spindle first, and you don't necessarily need to remove the spindle from the car. You could leave the bottom ball joint attached, and you know, most people, the smart people, do one side of the car and then they make a video on the other side once they've kind of gone through the steps. I unfortunately am doing these videos as I go along. So when I pull this out, you see here, there's the other spline is missing. This stayed attached to the transmission, or I should say the crankcase. So I had to go back and get this part out. When I pulled it out, there's a little bit of oil that's differential oil that is seeping out just a little bit. So I'm gonna have to top it back off once the job is done. I'm not sure if the reason why it's leaking is because the car is up on jack stands and it's leaning forward or back, I should say. But I was worried that there's supposed to be like a retaining clip to keep this from coming out, but on this particular car, that's not the case. I guess there is no limit. This could literally just slide out. Just be very careful. If any of these ball bearings, there's 3 of them, there's all these little roller pins in there. You do not want to lose those. You do not want to mess with this. Clean it. I would suggest you clean these without removing the actual ball bearings, and then pack it with fresh grease. So now that we have this out, we could go ahead and pack it with grease and get the new boots on there and take it from there. One other thing that I bought at Harbor Freight was this. I could not get the steering link out from the spindle, and this is it's amazing what the right tool will do. With this thing, it took literally like 20 seconds. You basically just hammer it in like this, and then as you tighten the screw, it pushes this out like that and just popped right out. Now I'm gonna have to replace this. There's a ball joint on there. You see the boot is basically ripped, and there's basically all the grease in there is either gone or dried up. So I'm worried about finding this piece. If any of you know where I could get it, let me know. I did a quick search online. I can't find them. So I don't know if these are even serviceable, where you could push out the ball joint and replace it, or if they're one of those deals where you got to replace the whole part. So let me know if you have any recommendations. I'm also reaching out on the forums to see if anybody could suggest something. So like I said, next step is to put the boots on the axle and on the CV joint, and pack it with grease and get it back in the car. Alright, so here are the 2 kits that I have. This one is for the outer CV boots, and it comes with the 2 boots, 2 packets of grease, and some sheet metal ties. Then the inside one, kind of the same thing. That's the other kit I have. I'll post these part numbers into the link below. But the CV boot's slightly different, smaller diameter, and kind of the same thing. Grease comes with 2, and it comes with all the sheet metal zip ties as well. Alright, so to be able to slide the boots on, we're gonna have to remove this bearing assembly, making sure that these bearings don't fall out. Looks like it's got a little retaining clip on here on the end, so I'm thinking that all you gotta do is open that up, and you should be able to slide the bearing assembly out. Yeah. Okay. Alright, so I got the bearing assembly out. So basically it's a splined end here on the shaft, and the spline, that's splined on the inside. It is not easy to remove it, and the way I did it was, I don't have a puller, but if you have a puller, that's the right way to do it. I kind of put my crescent wrench just against the collar here, without touching the ball bearings. Make sure I didn't mar or scratch or damage those, and very gently, just small taps working the way around, I was able to pull it out. So that's the technique I used. If you have a pulling tool, I suggest to use that instead. So now we have basically one side of the assembly where you're able to put the bellows through. So again, one for the inside, one for the outside. What I think I'm going to do as well is probably just put a coat of anti-rust paint just on this part of the shaft that's exposed. I'm just gonna tape everything else off. Just some chassis black, just to help with corrosion prevention. And then I'll be able to slide the sleeves over, or the bellows over, and pack this with grease.
This is a Ryan Little production.
lower these little tabs.
This is a Ryan Little production.
And there. So one thing to note is you should place this so that there's nothing that's gonna hang up in the rotation. So you want to make sure that's away from or opposite the rotation of the axle. In this case, the wheel rotates forward this way, so you put the tab folding back so it doesn't get caught on anything or snagged or anything gets ripped off. Alright, time to do the other side.
Production.
So first step, gonna put a little bit of grease in this shaft to get it to slide in easy. A little bit more grease on the splines here. We could get our ball bearing assembly in there. Make sure you put this in the right way. There's a taper to the splines. I don't know if you can see there. The inside splines have a taper. That taper goes in first. We're facing towards the shaft. Okay, so I'm gonna use a socket to tap this back in.
Ryan Little. Ryan Little.
Alright guys, so I got the CV boots installed. One thing that kind of caught me off guard when I was putting it together, but I don't think it's a big deal, is that the one of the kits, the one for the, I believe it was the outer boot kit, came with the zip tie style stainless steel wraps. Whereas the other kit came with these clamps where you basically need a special tool to squeeze that little crimp there. I'm lucky that I have that tool. It's the same kind of tool you use for PEX plumbing. So basically I installed it here. You can kind of see on this guy here. So basically, once you get it to, you select the slot that's tightest to whatever you're securing, and then once you have it to that, you basically need to squeeze this crimped section here, with this special tool, and it squeezes it even more. So I installed it over here. But the problem was I kind of had the inside ones done with the two zip ties because I kind of mixed the two kits together. So I'm a little bit disorganized when I worked, and I actually mixed the two bellows. So then I'm like figuring out which one is which because they look identical once you have them next to each other. And even putting them next to each other, you can't really tell them apart until you go to put them on, and you could see one slightly larger than the other. So in any case, I'm gonna I'm gonna put this back into the transaxle just so it's not exposed to the elements because it's been raining, and I'm gonna leave it hanging until I'm ready to install the rest of the suspension. For that, I need obviously to get those spring compressors, remove the spring, and try to find the steering tie rod replaced as well. So that's going to be next on the agenda. Almost forgot, this is where I got the CV boots from, ATV Parts Connection. They also have an eBay store. I actually think I got them from eBay, but that's the part number, or their part number, 615-10 for the outside CV joints, outside front, and for the inside it's 161-10. Again, each kit does one Each kit comes with 2 boots, so you could do both left and right. And I can't remember how much I paid for these, but I'll see if I could find the original eBay link to these as well.
Ryan Little.